everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and today I am doing a little job for my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and I am going to be covering an outdoor furniture set. So excuse my rough and ready appearance, but I'm mid-project, and I've spoken to somebody and they said that some tips will be helpful. So this isn't a full sew-along or a tutorial, it's just some tips and tricks if ever you want to have a go at doing something like this. So I'll turn the camera around and we'll have a look and see what I've been doing. Okay, so we're in my spare bedroom and I've got my cushions laid out here that are being recovered. So this is the old ones, as you can tell, with the old staining, etc. And we've got one that's got two square corners, and then we've got a few that have got a curve on the corner, like this one here. So the first thing you've got to do is have a look and see what shapes you've got to recover, because that's going to dictate how you approach this job. When you're recovering these, if you've already got the existing covers, then actually that's a really big help, because what you can do is you can, especially for the curves, and I'll talk about that in a second, is you can unpick the stitches around and you can make a template for, especially for the curves, to get those exactly right. So the first thing that you're going to do is measure. Now, excuse me wobbling the camera because I'm going to do this as I'm doing it. And literally you're going to find your seam on the edge here, and you're going to measure from one seam all the way across to the other seam. Now I can see on this one that it looks like it's shrunk slightly because that bottom edge is being pulled up to the top here. If you can see on both edges, it just looks like the side has been pulled up. So I'm going to add an extra ½ centimetre onto each edge, and that should just give us a little bit of extra room for these, just so that we can fit them nicely. So you measure that measurement across, and then I'm using 1 centimetre seam allowance, so I'll add on 2 centimetres, one for each side, and then I'm adding on an extra ½ centimetre to give me that difference so that it's not pulling quite so much. So that's one measurement that you need to take that way, and you're going to do the same front to back as well. If you've got a notebook, then draw out a picture of your piece front to back, and then write on it the measurements that you need. The other thing that you need to be aware of is how these are fastened. So in this one we've got a zip going all the way across the top here, and only down and down this little bit to the back just here. So again, that's a measurement that you're going to want to take, because this piece here is made up of two parts, one for either side. Now I prefer a lapped zip on mine, so this isn't a lapped zip, because a lapped zip will cover over the teeth of the zip, so I'll show you what I've done on mine. But you want to find out what this measurement is sort of in total for a finished measurement there, and that will usually measure the same as whatever it is on one of the edges where the zip, because the zip stops there, and then you've got the actual rest of the band here, and that band goes all the way around here, and this makes what's called a box cushion, where you've got this like box shape with this stand-up bit, and we've got the corners here that we need to replicate. So front to back is going to be one of your measurements, and side to side across the seat top, and you're going to need to cut out 2 of those. You're then going to measure the existing zip, because somebody's already worked out all of this for you, so you don't need to work this out, just copy what they've done. So in this case we're going to need 2 pieces here, but we're going to need to leave extra, and it's where you've got a zip, it'll be more than just 1 centimetre, because these zips are quite big, the ones that I'm using. I've got zips on a roll just here, and you can see that that tape there is wider, and I'd suggest you have quite a strong one. That's 3 centimetres that zip tape is. So if I just added 1 centimetre on each piece of this, that wouldn't be enough to do all that I need for the zip. So I'd add extra, because we can always trim it down on this top and bottom side, but you want enough to be doing your zip. And then you need your seam allowance for where it's attached into the edges here as well. And then again here, on the actual boxing bit, oops, you can measure from that seam again all the way under to the seam wherever it is underneath here. I mean, these are pretty gross, as you can see. And that will then give you your measurement. So in that case, that one's 11 centimetres. So I'll add 2 centimetres on, 1 for each seam allowance, top and bottom, and then another ½ centimetre. Well, on there, you probably don't need ½ centimetre on there, do you? Because that's long enough already to reach up to the top. So I'd cut these out they measure at 11, and I cut these out at 13. And make sure that you go all the way along, all the way around the edge. So this is what I've done with mine. I've laid all of mine out. And as I've cut them, I lay them back on top of where they've actually been cut. On another video, I'll show you how to do the, another clip, I'll show you how to do the curved edges to make sure that they're as right as possible. And then we're going to get on to sewing. Now, I have started to overlock these. Well, actually, my husband's doing all the overlocking for me. And he's doing these in sections. So I've got them clipped together for each cushion, so I know where I am. And I have checked all of the measurements, that the ones that are there are the same. And then you will overlock around all 4 edges so that you've got those ready to do. The reason why this other one isn't overlocked at the moment is I'm going to insert my zip, and then I'm going to measure across to make sure that the final width is the correct one for the zip placket, and I can cut it down if I need to, and I didn't want to waste my overlocker thread. And then you can then just overlock that as another step. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is doing my lapped zip into my band. So I just want to show you the finished cushion, because when we talk about this boxing on the edges, you can see how on some of them, especially this one that's been made by the professionals, if you like, they're really neat as to how to get this measurement right, so that you've got no excess on either side. Now, I've picked up a tip that I actually prefer, and that's from a company, I think it's called Sailrite. They're on YouTube, and what they advocate doing is having this little like fold in your fabric, so the zip actually finishes back here, and this is a fold in the fabric that hides the zip and the zip pull, and you can put that on either side should you wish. And what it means is that it just gives you that extra that you need to not have to get it precise every single time. So this is one of the finished ones that I've done. So we've got the curved edge there, and these will settle in once they're done. And we've got the box corner there that is perfect. It's just that the corner on the just looks a little bit puckered, doesn't it? But it is perfect when you look at how it's stitched. In terms of that, I might put a little bit of stuffing just in there just to poke it out a little bit, make it a bit more straight, but it is right. Bless you to my husband. And so this fold here gives you this ability to cut out a longer band. So allow for this when you're doing your band, especially if yours is one like the original ones where it finishes right up neat to the edge. You don't have to be that precise, because you can put this fold in, and this fold can be 2, 3, 4 inches, whatever you want. That one's, let me have a look, see what this one is. Excuse me if I'm wobbling the camera for you, I'm just trying to do it without a tripod. So that's probably 2.5 to 3 inches long, that fold. Where did it go to? It goes to there. Right, so it's 2 inches. So I've allowed for an extra 4 inches, which is an extra 10 centimetres, because you need the bit that goes over the top of the zip band, because that zip goes all the way in there. Let me just show you again, if I can get hold of it. So the zip goes in there and it just hides the zip pull, if you can see. And that goes all the way in there and just makes it nice and neat. But you need enough to cover over the top and also tuck behind. And then remember your seam allowance on both this panel and this panel at the same time when you're doing your measurements. But as I say, this is a tip that I picked up from Sailrite, and I'll put a link to them down below in the description, because that is an absolute lifesaver, and that's the difference between going grey while you're doing these and actually giving yourself some grace and actually being able to manage and how it is. So that's what you do. Cut out all your pieces. You can see I've got them all laid out here. I've got some tips on cutting them out and how to make sure that you've got straight of grain all the time. So for every time I cut, you can see where I've got this little edge here where I've taken a thread and then followed it all the way along before I start measuring. Then I start measuring from that first white thread and I ignore this because that then gives me straight of grain then for when I'm starting to cut out. And you'll be surprised how it starts to veer off. And I've had to straighten these up quite a lot. The looser the weave of the fabric, the more it's going to twist as you're trying to cut out and work with these. So the next thing my husband's doing now is overlocking all of the pieces apart from that extra edge on the zips. I'm going to go and put the zips in and going to do all of those in one go. So I'm almost going to piece stitch these now and then I'll take each one in turn and work with that to make them up. These here are just cushion covers that are going to be for the cushions on the top once it's all finished. As you can see, it's going to look really nice. So I hope that's helpful. I will come back to you and just show you how I sew around the corners here. But that's quite straightforward how to do that. If you've done any quilting, then you know how to do this kind of thing already. But if you've not, then you might not have seen it before. So I'll show you that bit. But yeah, I hope those little tips and tricks, as I say, not a full tutorial, not a full sew along, just a few tips and tricks if you're going to have to use this. But as I say, you can see my pile of the old ones there where I've taken off a panel and used that as a pattern to get the curves right. Okay, so I'm just working on the cushions as well. The other thing to do is while you're doing one bobbin, get your spare bobbins. I use these essential ones. I know you're supposed to use branded ones for your machine, but these work a treat for me. My thread is on a big spool here that I purchased, and it is an extra strong thread. So this or the Coats as Epic 050 would be really good. This one I'm using is a Coats Epic 040, so that's even thicker. It's upside down at the moment, sorry. That's even thicker than the one that I use for the animals. Sorry, get the right way, Claire. So I'm using that one, which is really good. I've rigged it up over the top of my stand because obviously I need it to feed properly, so it's going over the top of my stand that I usually use for my videos. Excuse the messy sewing room, I'm right mid project, so it always gets like this. And I am winding several bobbins at the same time, so I'll probably do 5 or 6 of these and just have them standing to one side for me. And then you've got them ready, because with it being a thicker thread you don't get as much onto your reel, so you will run out more often, and rather than stop each time and have to spin your spool and load that, then if you have several sitting and waiting for you, then you can use those and just pick those up as and when you need them. There we go, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on there, 6 or 7 on there, ready and waiting to go. Okay, so this is my quick and dirty way of doing a lapped zip. So I've bought these this zipper tape, and you buy it on a roll like this. Just buy it by the metre, and you need your zipper tape, and then you need your zip pull as well that goes on, feeds onto the end of the zip. So for now I leave it without the zipper teeth on, and I'm going to take one end of my tape and just pull it apart. Feels like quite scary when you're doing this. I'm then going to take one of my long zip bands that has been overlocked, and I've got the right side of my zipper tape up, and I'm going to turn it over and put it face down so the raw edge of the zipper tape is against the raw edge of my overlocked piece of zipper band. I've then got a adjustable foot on, and I'll show you that later when I finish using it, because I don't want to take it off right just now. I'll insert a picture. So really I use this for bias bind, for making piping and all sorts. And then what I'm going to do is make sure I'm going to miss my foot before I start sewing, and I am attaching the zipper tape to the one side of my band, so it's just a single piece, and I try and keep it even all the way down, and I keep just undoing the zipper tape as I go, so that until I get to the end of my piece of fabric that I'm sewing. Try not to go too fast, and I'll come back to you at the bottom when I've got further down here. Those who follow my channel as well will be familiar with the fact that I've got a pin in my fabric piece that denotes the top of the fabric, so that I can take that out now, because I know that this is now the top of my fabric, and I work with that, and I'm just going to continue sewing that down. And I've done that same pin trick on all of my pattern pieces and fabric pieces, so that I know which is the right side up. I get to the end here, I'm just going to use my scissors, and I just cut the tape off and just go through the nylon edge. As you can see, it just cuts off, and I just sew off the end. I'm not reversing stitching on here because we're going to be going through this again, and so I find that that's probably enough. So cut my threads, go back up to the beginning and cut the starting threads. Then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the edge of the fabric over so that I expose the teeth. Okay, and then we're going to sew down just quite close to the edge here, just top stitching this edge down here. And you'll see the way I do it, it's not good if you've need a manicure, but I pull the teeth away, so I cup the edge of the teeth, as you can see there, with my nails, and keep my hand still, and that will make sure that that edge tape feeds all the way through properly. Just switch my foot over just so that it's gone onto the other side. Always when you do that, make sure that you can lower your foot without breaking your needle. And then we're going to set off sewing again. So again, I'm pulling on with my left hand the fabric away from the seam I just sewed. Okay, so let's just get on with this now. If you stop, just put your needle in your work. Okay, so from the underneath, you can see we've got 2 rows of stitching, and from the top you can only see that 1 row of top stitching that is just holding that edge away from the teeth of the zip, and that's because we attach the zipper tape onto the fabric the first pass, and then the second pass was just to put this nice neat edge on, just so that that edge isn't going to get into the teeth at all. Once you've done that, put that to one side, and then you get your second piece of fabric, and you're going to make sure that you've got your top fabric on top. You've got the top of your fabric, the right side of your fabric up. You're going to find the end of your zip where you were sewing the zipper tape, and you're going to turn it over so that it's face down onto your piece of fabric with the raw edges that you are going to be together. And then what we do then is we're just going to do exactly the same thing. We're just going to attach the zipper tape to the edge. So I'll put both raw edges together, and I'm just following the edge of the zipper tape with my presser foot just to give me an edge. So that's the first pass on this one. So the next thing you do then is you find your zipper pull, and I always put it with the zipper pull facing away from me, and then the lead edge that's going to pull the zip down, I have that towards me. I'm going to fold that one we've just sewn backwards and start and feed the teeth in one side of the zip, and just sort of so that it's just sort of caught. Yeah, I've just got it in one side. You then find your other piece of fabric that you've put safely to one side, the one that you top stitched, and then you're going to feed the other side of the zipper tape into the other side of the zip. Now this does take a little bit of getting used to, because it doesn't always work full time first time, but then you want to be able to sort of push it in as far as you can on both sides, and then you're going to pull on your zipper teeth to try and pull that together, and eventually, as you can see just there, if you kind of hold on to both top bits, it'll eventually come down. Now just remember, you've got no stopper at the other end of this, so you're going to pull this all the way down to the end, but then this one's got little prongs in the back that actually sit into the zip, so I'm going to push those down, and that fast, it's got little prongs on the back here that sort of grip onto the zip, so I can pop those down, and that zip is then fixed in place. Take that pin out. Now this is the bit where it gets quick and dirty, in my opinion. So the zipper tape is facing out, so your zipper tape is splayed like that. You've got one side here where you've already top stitched that down, and I usually go to the middle, make sure your tape is facing out so that both sides are out, and then I'm going to fold this down, keeping the fabric as straight as possible, just until we've covered that top stitching edge, and then I put a pin holding that flap down. This is not the way to do it if you want a couture method, or if you want something that's really, really precise, but this is the way that it's working and has worked for me, so hence why I'm showing it to you. And then do that all the way down your zip. I start in the middle because sometimes you get some bunching, and just make sure you keep folding that back, so you're only just covering the zipper teeth and that top stitching. I usually just take it just over that top stitching, and then that's usually enough. So pins all the way down, and then I go back once I've done that row of pinning, and then I put a pin in between all of the other pins, but on the other side. So feel on your zip for your teeth, mine are there, and then pin through the back on the other side. So that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like from the back. Can you see the pins there? And the pins are here. So you're sewing on either side, because what you want is that when you've finished, you get this little flap over the top of your zipper teeth, and that hides the zip when you're working with it, and just protects it either from sun or from the elements, or just from catching on anything. And I've found that if I pin in between the zips holding the flap down, and it's just going to give you a bit of an edge to work to when you're sewing. So just keep doing that all the way down, and then I'll show you what I do next. Once you've done that, just get your tape measure. Oh, mine's on the floor again. Keeps dropping off the table. And just measure to make sure that across the width of your zip band that you've not lost so much that it's narrower than what you need. So mine's 13.5 and that's about 13.7, so I'm going to go with that. And again, that one's okay. So just measure along and just adjust it if you need to, just to make it so that you've got it the right width that you need for your project. Once you've done that, oh, put that across one side, we are now going to position our needle and our presser foot so that we can sew not on the flap edge of the pins, not on the flap edge here. We're going to sew on the other side where the other pins are. So you're going to line up your presser foot so that you're not on the nylon of the zip, and you can kind of feel when you drop down into the valley. So now we've got the zipper foot down on the other side of the nylon tape, and now I'm just going to start sewing. Now you do find that it does bunch up on the side that's looser, so do just keep sort of pushing the thread's cutting in the way. Do just keep sort of pushing your fibres up so that you've got them, you're kind of going up, and I'm using the edge of the nylon teeth, not right up to it, but it's close enough that it will help give you a bit of a guide. I'm taking my pins out before I get to them. But sometimes, as you can see, you start to get like a little bit of puffiness. So just pull back a little bit on the other side of the zipper tape and then massage those fibres forward. You don't want to get any puckers though. We're not looking to get any puckers in this. But sometimes you just have to just push those fibres so that they can't be put out of place. Ideally with this kind of thread and fabric, you would be using a walking foot. But because we need to get right up to that zip, then you can't use a walking foot for that, so you've got to just take it steady. So there, we've nearly got a pucker. So just lift up your presser foot, just release the pressure underneath, and then just carry on again. All the same tips that I give you when you're doing the dressmaking or the toy clothes for lunar lapping. If you can hear my bobbin making funny noises, it's because it's a thicker thread, so it's just objecting slightly. So we're getting to the zipper pull now. So just stay a few stitches back, needle in your work. Take out the pin on the other side, holding the flap down so you expose the zip. Lift your zipper pull up and slide it back, and then lift your presser foot up as well so that you can slide your zip out of the way. Presser foot down and just carry off onto the edge. Whoops. And take your threads off. Put that one there caught. And then remove all of your pins. Move the sewing machine just out of the way while I just remove these pins. Then you can see that you've got what's called a lapped zipper. So your zip's hidden under there, and there's the little flap that covers over. So it's a lapped, L-A-P-P-E-D zipper or zip. And then what happens is, once I've taken out all of these pins, you'll see that this then works quite nicely, but it just hides that tape and just gives you the zip and gives you a really nice finish. So as you can see, the zip opens all the way along all nicely, backwards and forwards, and when it's finished, the flap closes just nicely. So it's not the official way to do it. You should be doing tacking, you should be doing all sorts, but when I've got a job on like this that I'm trying to get done and finished, then sometimes you have to adapt, and that's one of the adaptations that I've found works really well for me. Okay, so what we then do is we sew the zip placket onto the box band that goes all the way round. So you're making one continuous loop. Okay, so there's the other end of the zip. There's my infill piece because my fabric wasn't wide enough, so I've just put an infill piece in that's just the same width, but just in there, and you won't see it because it'll be tucked around the back of the sofa. Just make sure you've got all your right sides together. That's where your pins come in, just to tell you where you are. And also, once you've got it all together, just lay it alongside itself, just to make sure that you've not got a twist in it anywhere, because you do not want to twist. Then I like the deepest pocket and my final pocket to be at the side of the zip that's got the zip pull on it when it's closed, so that that will cover over and will hide that the most. So I go to the other end of my zip, and then I make a pleat in the fabric. I just bring it forward over the edge of the zip by about a couple of inches. I just kind of keep that as straight as I can do, and then so that you've got like a little pocket there. And then I'm going to flip it over. You're not going to sew just here, you're going to go sew back here where the start of the zip is. So let me just come back here again, move my fabric. So I just make my pleat coming forward. Oops, sorry, I don't want to have myself in it because I'm a scruffy today. So you've got your pleat there, and there's your zip going in. So I don't sew along this edge just here and fold that pleating because I want that to open. I go back a couple of inches to where I attach the two bands together, and that's where I sew. Again, you can pin this if you want, but there's my pleat there, and I'm not sewing on the pleat, I'm sewing back here where I joined my fabrics together at the end. Hold on to your threads as normal. Take your time sewing over the top of the nylon zipper. Don't ever try and sew over a metal zipper. And I just close that. I don't bother reversing at the end of that because you've already got a row of stitching holding it together. So you've got a flap here, because then when we come to sew this together, that flap will get sewn down on either edge as we're sewing it into the cushion, and that's where your zip can go, or just hide that end. Now the other end of the zip I leave loose at this moment in time, because that's going to be my run-off, if you like, that's going to take all of the excess fabric that I need. You do need to open your zip a little bit so you can get your hand in to be able to move that. Don't ever sew it up when you've got your zip right at the top here, otherwise you'll get unstuck. Okay, so the next thing then that I do is that pleat that we've just formed. I don't want that to be right on a corner. And this one here has got 4 corners, so I need to make sure I get this the right way round. And it's going across like that. So I've got my pin. My pin was showing back to front. So the top of the pin was at the back, and then the point of the pin was at the front. And then what I do is, so you want that towards the back. I just measure along to make sure that we're going to go down one side, and we are. So I start this pleat here away from a corner at the back, only by a couple of inches or so. It doesn't need to be much. So there's my corner of my bottom seat panel, and this is the corner, so I've got about a couple of inches, and then I start sewing just on here for now, because we're going to flip it over and then we're going to sew the other side. So you're going to sew this on in 2 halves, okay? So let's just make sure I don't knock my camera. And I'm literally just going to sew the other side of the pleat and just start it onto that pleat that we've just sewn in. Keep your seam allowance the same amount, because you need that to be right to know where you are. Where I've got a seam for that join, I'm going to open up my edges. Oh, can you see? Open up my seam and press that open, so sew it open. And you'll note I've got my walking foot on, which is absolutely fabulous for this type of project. Can't see very well, sorry. There's not a lot to see. I'm just going to start and sew round. And I'm just matching the edges up as best as I can do. And then I'll show you what we do when we come to a corner, because we'll have a corner very shortly. Okay, so we're coming up to a corner. Keep going a little bit more. You want to be about 5 or 6 inches away from your corner. And then what you want to do is, where the edge of your fabric is on your corner, which you're not going to be able to see here, but I've got a corner there for my fabric, and there's my panel lying on top. So lay the two on top just straight in front of you, and where you can feel the edge of the fabric is against the edge, just go 1 centimetre back from there, because that's our seam allowance, and make a snip. Now I'm just making the snip 1/4 inch. It's just almost not quite through my overlocking, but just through the overlocking on the edge, and then you sew up to that point there, so to 1 centimetre away from the corner. So just keep an eye on it, get your bearings, and then you want your needle in your work once you've got that down. Leave your needle in your work because we're going to pivot. And then what we do, you're going to lift your presser foot up, so lift that up, and you're going to then fold your band towards the back whilst bringing the panel, the bottom panel, forward. So there's my panel coming forward, and there's my top band going back, getting stuck on everything, because you're making a right hand turn at this corner here. It's really difficult to see. Let me just see if I can bring you in to show you. So there's my corner there. So I've got a flap of fabric here, flap of fabric here, almost at right angles. So it's a bit like when you're quilting and you're turning a corner. And then now I'm going to go down this side. So my needle stayed in the work, and I've not gone through all of my fibres up into the corner, and now I'm going to carry on down. Okay, let's see if we can get you from this angle, because I'm just coming up to a corner again. So sew up towards your corner, so you're about 4 or 5 inches away. Apologies for the rattle on the screen. So I can feel here now where the edge of my bottom panel is, and this is my band. So I'm going to locate that point where they start where a band starts to come off the edge of the cushion, and measure in about a centimetre, and then just snip through, just through the edge of your overlocking. Literally, it's just that much. You don't need much at all. Literally, it's just a small amount, 1/4 inch maximum. Then you're going to sew down until you are kind of level with that point. So just bear in mind where you are for that. And then put your needle in your work. Then you lift up your presser foot, and this is the bit that I was saying before. So now we're going to take the band, and we're going to take that back, making a pleat in here. Just take that back, and then we're going to locate the bottom panel under here and bring that forward. And what happens is that you get this like corner turn in the corner of your work here, but the needle's in and staying straight, so the fibres are all kept still. If you've got an awl, you can just tuck those down just to make sure everything's all nice and neat, and that you don't want any puckers in front of your needle. You need that awl just staying straight. Then you can put your presser foot down again and just start stitching. I do go back after I finish sewing these, and I just go over my corners again. Just start one side, go in and do that pivot again and go down the other side, and that does seem to just reinforce them. I don't stitch right on top of the stitches that I've already done. I just sort of go like a difference between a scant 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, and a whole 1/4 inch. Just a couple of fibres, and just so you've got 2 rows of stitching, but not directly on the top of each other, and that seems to secure it really nicely. So at the again this time I'm going all the way around, just as I would do. And I'm getting towards now where the other end of the zip is. This is the side without the pleating. This is just the rough side, the ordinary side, not rough side. It's just the side without pleating. So now I'm sort of close enough now. I'm just going to reverse, that wrong button there, do it left-handed, and just finish my stitches there. Take my work out. Where's my snips? Here they are. And I'm going to take those out. Okay, so I haven't gone all the way around. You can see that this is going to be where our fold is going to be, but I need to leave enough room for that. So now what we do is we turn the cushion completely over, so the band is now on the bottom, and we go back to where we started stitching in the first place, which was near this corner just here. So if you look, there's our pleat there with the other end of the zip, and this is where I was stitching before. Just take those threads off, starting threads. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start stitching, and again you'll be able to see this 1 centimetre from this side. So I just go just a little bit in front of where I was, a couple of stitches and just reverse just to fasten those off. And then wherever the crossover is here, I can lift that up and then I eyeball it and I just put a snip just through my overlocking just there. Not very much, as I say, 1/4 inch max, because you don't want to go right up to your stitches and then you have to stop stitching about 1 centimetre away. Then you lift up your presser foot. So this time the bottom panel of the seat is in front of me, so that's going to come over on the top whilst I push the zip panel away to the back, and then I just line up those raw edges. You can use your awl if you need to, just to make sure everything lays all straight underneath your presser foot again. Then put your foot down and then you start stitching again. Okay, so now we're coming down this side of the cushion. I'm going to stop you from watching me. I've got one more corner to go, but then once I've turned the corner, I'm going to then show you what I do with the end of the panel, the end of the zip panel. But I don't want to keep making the screen rock because, as I say, I'm having to use my little tripod and it doesn't work very well. It'll make you a bit dizzy. So bear with me and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I'm just on that final side, and the only bit that I've not got sewn yet is this bit here, which has got the end of the zip in that I want to create the pleat. And this is the magic bit as far as I'm concerned. Let me just move the machine back slightly so that I think you can see better. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to smooth down from the other end of the fabric. So that's where we finished stitching already. If you remember, we'd started at half stitching this. That's the end of that seam. So you smooth that down towards your zip panel, so that has to be all nice and straight, and then on the other end of where you're sewing you need to be nice and straight, and you can hopefully see that in the middle you get this little pleat forming here, and that's what we want to do. We want to fold that over on top of itself so that that then fits nicely into there, and one's going to just run onto the other, so you've taken out the excess of any difference in the band that you had before. So So when you're stitching, because the band is one long continuous piece, it's deliberately longer than the outer edge of the panels because we wanted this pleat to form. It's deliberate so that the zip will hide inside it. So I've accounted for that in my cutting out and when I've been measuring the end. But I sew all of the other sides, and as we saw, I sewed half of the cushion first, and then I flipped it over, and then I started again where I'd started originally, and sewed back the other way because I wanted to sew onto this pleat itself, because I don't want it to, I want it to take up any excess in this quilt. It's not a quilt. It's a cushion. It's a cushion, Claire. I'm going crazy. So now I'm just going to sew down. And I'm going to making sure that this stays nice. So it's most important that you stay, because I don't want a little pucker where I join my fabric on again. So let's just sew over the pleat. And now what I'm starting to pay attention to is my finishing point where my previous stitching is, because I don't want a pucker at that point. So I'm holding the two ends together at that point and keeping my fingers there to make sure there's nothing going to ruckle up on the top or the bottom, so that as I start to sew, one's just going to smoothly go on to the other. Oh, piece of loose thread, look. Okay. And then when I get to that, I just cross over the stitches and then I just press reverse and just finish those stitches off. Needle up, fabric out. And then if I just show you here, if I flip it over, that's the little pleat where the zipper pull will go inside to hide. And then if I show you the corners, how the corners have worked out, look at that lovely, lovely right angle corner there. Can you see? I hold it from the top, you might be able to see better. So that's how we want it to be. That little bit there will flap down. We've got a pleat at the start here. Now I don't top stitch down on the other end of the pleat at all because you can't. So this is the other pleat at the other end of the zip, so you can see that the zipper pull can go, if it's open it'll go behind this one, and then if I go to the other end of the zip, then when that's ready then the zip pull will hide in there. I've got it open at the moment because of course I'm stitching it. Okay. The next thing then to do is to start and work out where your edges are. So the next thing you do is go to your box pleats and you're going to fold it down. Let's just move that zip a little bit further. Let's close it a little bit easier. So now what I do now is fold my corner exactly where that snip was, and I make the snip on the other side because this is going to be like our little notches to follow to make sure that these are straight. So there's one there, so let's go and find the other little corner. Other corner should I say. And then I'm just folding my fabric down so that those sides there are together. The notch is right on the other side, and that will give you a point. Put that down on top of each other where you can just put a little snip in just to make sure that it's right. And literally that's all I'm doing, just snipping almost up to but not through all of the overlocking. So that's two corners. Here's another one. Put that point right on the edge there, put those on top of each other, and that will give you your point where those corners should then match. Again, you have got a little bit of leeway with this method because it does help you, allow you to kind of wiggle it a little bit if you need to. And we always like a little bit of wiggle room, don't we? So now I look at my other piece, fabric piece. I went from front to back with my zip, with my pin, so I know that the seat panel is going across. And then I find a notch and I put that 1 centimetre away from a corner. And you can see on here, hopefully, what happens when you turn that corner, because that notch just allows the fabric to open out a bit, just to spin round that corner. So if you look, you've got both edges, raw edges matching, and then you've got that little square in the middle there, and then our stitches just go a couple of threads into the corner bit, the way that we do it, so you're not right on the cut edge of the fabric at all where that is, you're just a few threads in, which then keeps it all intact. But for now we just need to put those on, and I use binding clips to hold that together. And then once you've got your orientation right, you can take your pin out that shows you which is right and wrong. So there's my other notch. That needs to be 1 centimetre away from that edge. So I'll pop that on. And then I go into the middle. Now we're on, so this is my final edge again. So I will, so if you look, that's the pleat that we finish with, and I'll always finish going into that pleat because I can always make that bigger or smaller as I need it to be to take up the excess as we're going round. So I don't start with that corner. I'll start near it, but so that I can run onto it. And then those two edges should lie pretty straight and flat because they've been cut out the same way and all at the same time. I always cut my fabric out for these kind of projects singularly. I don't double it over, just as a little aside, because I think you can work with your pattern placement and you've got to get that grain right as well, otherwise it doesn't look right. So that's my other notch, that needs to be 1 centimetre away from there. And I just go round and pin, and I'm just trying to make sure that there's not too much excess in any points. There's a little bit, that was a little bit excess there, so we'll just have to just keep an eye on that as we're going round. And we're back to this original one, because some places the fabric will stretch out a little bit more than others. So you just want to be as careful as you can be. And as I say, we've got that run-off place should we need it. Right, that's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to where that pleat is. It's not that one, because that's the one that's sewn down. And I am going to start sewing away from the pleat, the open pleat that we've not sewn down yet, because I want that to go forward and to sit over. So if I start stitching here, then we'll run onto that pleat when we close it all up finally for good. So I've got my flat bottom panel on the bottom. Just getting my threads right. Make sure your raw edges are together. Make sure it's all straight. And then I start stitching and reverse. Sorry, my hand's in the way, but it's difficult for me to show you. Okay, and then we're just going to do exactly the same now, going down the straight edges, and I'm going to do the same pivot on the corner, but hopefully my corners will be, and I'll try and get those as close as I can. If I have to cut a new snip, I will do, and I won't stress about it too much, but I wouldn't want to be moving it on more than a centimetre, say, because otherwise your band's going to be twisted and it's never going to sit right. So you've got to just be careful to watch that as you're going round. Okay, I'm going to come back to you when we're back towards the end of the pleat, so I can show you how I close it, because this bit is all fairly straightforward. Okay, so I've just turned the final corner now, and I'm heading back down now. Let's take those threads off, that was just our starting threads. Heading back down now to close this gap up. So this is where you can see the pleat here is wanting to form. That's the excess. We always want that to be sitting flat against the panel. So all of the excess is being pushed forward. So that's what's going to take up the excess. So I pull back on the panel where the zip is at the end to make that lie flat. So this is the bottom of the final panel here. So hold that flat. Hold this top bit flat so that you've got a straight edge there, and all the excess gets folded underneath. And so when we start to sew again, we're going to sew onto the pleat that we've just formed here, and then we're going to match up with our stitching where we started. So just take your time, because you want to make sure there's no pucker at that point. Just run onto your stitches and then just reverse, just to cancel those stitches, just to cast them off, and then you can take it out. And there we've got our pleat, which is underneath there, but there's no pucker joining on here. Let me just turn this round to show you from the other side. Undo the zip, which is why you need to have a little bit of your zip open, otherwise you won't be able to get your cushion turned inside it the right way round. I don't snip off the corners of these if I can help it. I want them just to be nice and have as much stability as possible. So there's two corners there, that's all matching all nicely. Oh, can you see those? Yeah, two corners there. And here's a corner just away from where we've put that zip band in. So another two lovely corners. And there we go, that's where the zip will hide, in that side. And then here, on this other side, we'll just push those corners out as well. Got a stray thread just there. Occupational hazard. So again, two lovely, lovely corners here with that method. And then this zip here will go back, and then we can hide inside that, so it gives you like a gusset for opening up to put your cushions on as well. And then if we zip it all the way to the other side, then the zip will tuck inside that this one's not very big, so obviously slightly different measurement for this one, but I do like them to be slightly bigger than that. But as long as it covers the zip, it's fine. And then I just fold the zip down onto itself, and that then is a lovely neat edge at that end as well. So I hope that helps in terms of how I put these together for a boxed one. As I say, the best place to look is on the Sailrite website, because they've got some fabulous upholstery tutorials. I'm just scratching the surface with this one today, just to show you what I've been up to. And as I say, I think it was Amanda, hello Amanda, asked me if I would mind just showing her and giving her a few tips. So for anybody else who's one of my subscribers, if you found value in this video, I know it's a bit rough and ready, this one is, but hopefully you've enjoyed watching it. And I'll just take some video now of the cushion once it's on, and you'll see them all coming together. But the only thing I did forget to do before I turn this round is that I now go in and reinforce these corners. So can you see how we were able to pivot around that corner without going right up to the cut threads? Because there's our cut threads just there. Let me put this yellow behind it. There's our cut threads just there. And then there's our stitching line just there. So you've got all of this here to keep it nice and integral and stable. So now what I will do is on all of these corners, there's going to be 8 of them, so I count them. So I make sure, and also make sure that you're not doing one twice, is I then start maybe 2 inches away, and I go just to the seam allowance side of the edge. I make sure that my panel for the seat panel is flat, and then I will then hold on to, oh, you can't see if I hold on to my threads that way, can you? I don't want them to make a nest. So if I hold on to my threads that way, I then do a few stitches down here, just follow along, trying not to sew on the exact same stitches that I've already sewn, and then put my needle in my work, just on that, right on the corner where I pivoted last time. I then pivot everything round again, so taking all of this so it's all nice and flat, and then I put my presser foot down again, and I'll do another 2 inches. Needle up, work out. Take my threads off, because I think that is a stress point just there. So hopefully you can see that I've got like 2 consecutive rows of stitching there, and again there, and then we go back into single stitching. I mean, this thread is so strong, but that corner then hasn't puckered up at all and is lovely and sharp in terms of a corner. But just that extra little bit of reinforcing, I think, is just a good idea. So I do that. I don't do it when I'm sewing, because I don't want to have a break where I start going forwards and go back again. I want that to be a continuous line of thread. So that's why I just go back and do that. So I'll just do that on all four corners. Yeah, so there's 8 in total. And then that will then reinforce those before I put the cushion on and make sure it fits. Okay, and this is the square one that we've just done with all the 4 corners, fitting all very nicely. I think some of the corners of the foam have got a little bit rounded when it's been made, but the actual cover itself and the little pocket there for the zip, and there's the lap zip on the edge there as well. So they're looking pretty good, I think. Next thing, the occasional cushions are done, so that's all fine. And then next I'm just onto the back cushions, but I'm just going to do the same with the zip in terms of they're just rectangles sewn together, so there's nothing technical about those. That's just the same as making an ordinary cushion. So that's about it. I know I'm looking a bit haggard because I've not got any makeup on, so I hope you forgive me. But if you have found any value from this video, then please consider liking and subscribing. I make videos and tutorials on dressmaking and on soft toy making, a certain character called Luna Lapin, and her wardrobe, which I've made. But also just have a look round at my channel and have a look and see. I do some home decor things every now and again, but primarily it's dressmaking and then the soft toy making. I hope you've had a good day. I hope you've enjoyed watching me today as well. I hope it's given you some thoughts. Please do go and check out the Sailrite site. It really, really is an excellent resource if ever you do any upholstery of any kind. There's loads and loads of tutorials there. It's not just for boats, it's for all sorts of things. So you'll find lots there to keep you interested and keep you moving in the right direction. So happy stitching, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.